In today's video, we're going to take a look at the Endless Punishment Commander deck, which is black-red and features Valgavoth, Harrower of Souls, as the face commander. It looks like it's going to be pretty cool, so let's jump into it and take a look. Alright everybody, thank you so much for being here. I'm back again today with another video. I'm trying to stay on top of these as best I can, and this one was just revealed an hour or so ago, so I don't have super high quality scans for some of the cards, but we're going to go through them. This is the red-black Rakdos commander deck, and I like the face commanders, but they're both very different, and we're going to talk about them both. But first, if you guys do enjoy the video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Click the bell icon if you want to be notified when new videos are posted, and yeah, stay tuned to the channel here, obviously, for ongoing coverage, and hopefully after the Duskmourn spoilers end, I'll have a little time to do a bit more creative Magic content, especially as we get into the Halloween season, which is like partially my favorite time of the year, so obviously plenty to look forward to. Now this commander deck is, like I said, it is black-red. It seems to be themed around demons to an extent. For what it's worth, we get a lot of new demon support cards, both in the main set and in the commander deck here, which is pretty cool if you're a fan of that kindred archetype. So let's look at Valgavoth first. He is 2 black-red legendary creature elder demon with flying and ward, pay 2 life. Whenever an opponent loses life for the first time during each of their turns, place a +1/+1 counter on Valgavoth and draw a card. Not bad. This card would be like insane in like standard or something, where with that mana cost and the ability to kind of generate resources to that extent. But obviously not standard legal. Pretty good. The built-in ward kind of makes it that if the opponent does want to remove it, you can trigger his other effects or even just target it in general. But you're probably going to want to play this with other cards that hit your opponent for damage so that you can make the most out of its abilities. The only downside for me is that ward pay 2 life is really not that hard to do, obviously. I know it plays into his ability, but there's nothing stopping your opponent from using like a Swords to Plowshares on your turn to do this, paying the 2 life and getting rid of it. I almost would have rather seen the ward be an actual ward, like ward 2 or something, because it would at least discourage a bit, you know, hitting it as easily as they can. So while I understand the design perspective, I just don't know that it's very fragile. It can get popped pretty easily, especially in Commander where you have 40 life. But it's not bad. It's got some absolutely amazing artwork, and Valgavoth as a character is really cool. I'm not currently up to date with everything going on with the Duskmourn story, but I kind of hope we see him again at some point, because I think he's fucking sweet. So, not my favorite in terms of playability, because it just feels a little bit like, it feels like a bit of a glass cannon. Like, it can do a lot, and obviously it can generate resources for you, but it's also very easy to remove without even having to worry about giving your opponent the extra card. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit off on that, but we'll look at the Lord of Pain. And I also want to complain for a second here, because I use ad blocker on my browser, and for some reason it just does not work on Magic Spoiler, and I don't know why. It's really annoying, so I'm sorry about the ads being there, but there's nothing that I can do about them other than like individually singling out each one to block, and that is just going to take way too much time for, you know, what's a very minor thing. But in case anyone ever saw them and wondered, that's why they're there. The Lord of Pain, that is some absolutely wild art too on this. This is a hilarious card. It is 3 black-red with menace and says your opponents can't gain life. Whenever a player casts their first spell each turn, choose another target player. The Lord of Pain deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to the chosen player. This card is going to make politicking very, very interesting in pods. First of all, it's hilarious because it's like your opponent casts something and you're like, okay, I'm going to hit this person, vice versa. Like if you're playing in a one-on-one commander, or if it gets down to a point where it's just you and one other person in the pod, it can actually become a bit of a detriment because you have to target someone and you would have to target yourself because it's another player. But overall, in the general scope of Commander and how it works, this card is just really funny. And I think there's a lot of ways to make this work in a more viable way than the other commander, but of course he does cost 1 more, and you know, but he is an assassin too, so there's a lot of assassin cards from the Assassin's Creed set that will work pretty well in the commander format, that might allow you to build around this guy. I do think he has a better framework as a commander, whereas honestly Valgavoth might be better in the 99 of a deck if we're just talking about like objective usability. But what do you guys think? Which one of the 2 phase commanders do you think is better? I lean towards the Lord of Pain because I think he's kind of unique and he's pretty cool, but I digress. I know everyone's going to have their own opinions on it. Persistent Constrictor is 4 and a black creature, zombie snake. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, they lose 1 life, and you put a -1/-1 counter on up to 1 target creature they control. And it has persist, so if it dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with 1. We don't often see the -1/-1 counter mechanic, and kind of understandably, because it's a really, really powerful mechanic that could get out of hand quickly, especially because the -1/-1 counters can get around things like indestructible, but it's a pretty solid card. It is a zombie, so it does have some synergy with that, and, you know, being able to stack your opponent's creatures with counters means they are going to want to get rid of this. Because it is each opponent's upkeep in a pod, you're going to start to generate some pretty, you know, significant damage going around here, where I think this is going to be a card that people are probably going to remove pretty quickly. Obviously, if they do, it comes back with, you know, with the counter on it, but it's probably going to be a very threatening card that I don't expect to last too long unless you have ways to kind of keep it alive, even after its revival. Sadistic Shell Game, just, really cool art, and I love the theme there. 4 and a black sorcery. Starting with the next opponent in turn order, each player chooses a creature you don't control. Destroy the chosen creatures. So, it's funny, like, okay, your creatures are all going to be safe. Everyone's going to pop other stuff. You can kind of work, again, to politic, knowing your stuff's safe, but it does cost more than a damnation, which would just wipe the board. At most, you're getting, you know, 4 creatures off the board, but this can be pretty good, and obviously it just depends on who's in the lead and whether or not there's actual incentive here. It's good, but I don't know if I'm like, I gotta get, like, this is gonna be great. Like, it's a little costly, and there's plenty of removal cards that black has access to that might be a little bit better than this, but I do appreciate what it's doing flavor-wise. Barb Flare Gremlin is a red 3 and a red creature gremlin with first strike and haste. When a player taps a land for mana, if Gremlin is tapped, that player adds 1 mana of any type that land produced. Then that land deals 1 damage to that player. So it's a mana barbs, which is kind of cool, obviously on a body. So if it's tapped, everyone's getting extra mana. However, they're taking damage. So you're getting more mana, but you're dealing a damage for each land that you tap. Not bad. And then on your turn, obviously, you can, you know, make sure that he's not tapped so you don't get burned unless you want to actually utilize the extra mana. I will say this is a card that does, you know, work really well with Valgavoth because you're basically guaranteeing your opponent's going to take damage, but that's also assuming they're just going to leave all this stuff there, and a lot of times they're probably going to get 1 or 2 pieces of the combo off the board. But I do like the card, and I like the throwback to Mana Barbs as well. Or is it Mana Flare? I think it might be Mana Flare. I was just thinking Barb because it's in the name. But either way, one of those older cards that does plays on those effects. Gleeful Arsonist is 2 and a red creature human wizard. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, deal damage equal to its power to that player. And it has Undying. When it dies, if it had no +1/+1 counters, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter. I might be missing something, but this seems pretty freaking good. Very low cost in terms of what it can do, and it is going to put a lot of pressure on the opponent, and when it does die, it comes back stronger, so it's going to be twice as hard to remove. Obviously, if you're playing against somebody who doesn't play as many creatures or plays a lot of non-creature spells, they really have to think about whether or not they want to play them, because if you buff this up in some capacity, then you're starting to deal a lot of damage. I mean, even if you get a couple counters on this, 2, 3, every time an opponent plays a non-creature, they're taking 3 damage, 4 damage, like, that's gonna be, even in Commander, that's, it's only gonna take a certain number of spells to really make that, do something. So I like this, it's a good card. I think a lot of red decks are gonna utilize it. Suspended Sentence is 3 and a black instant. Destroy target creature an opponent controls. That player loses 3 life. Then exile this card with 3 time counters. You can also cast it with Suspend, so you put it out, 3 counters on it for 1 and a black, and then in 3 turns when the counters are removed, you can play it for free. So what's cool about this is every couple of turns, you're basically getting guaranteed removal, and there's not much the opponents can do about it because it's going to get exiled. And if you are playing cards that can reduce time counters, that's even better because you can play it more quickly. We know the Doctor Who deck had a lot of those, but I don't think there were any for black specifically, so this would have to fit into another color combination. Not bad. I mean, it's not the best removal spell, but the fact that it's recurring and keeps coming back is definitely nice. And I think it's a cute card with some playability. Spiked Corridor and Torture Pit. I don't know why they can't put these rooms sideways so we can see them, because I gotta tilt my head to read it too. This is an enchantment room that costs 3 and a red on the left and says, when you unlock this door, create 3 1/1 red devil creature tokens with, when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. On the Torture Pit side, it says, if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to your opponent, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. Both pretty common red effects. If you get them both unlocked, you know, when your devil tokens die, you're dealing 3 damage for each one, so that's actually pretty cool. It's pretty good just to get access to the torture pit side, but having the tokens is pretty solid. I have to say, I think a lot of the room cards have been better than I thought they were going to be. When they introduce a new mechanic like that, sometimes it's like, these are going to be kind of gimmicky, and they are gimmicky to an extent, but there are a lot of cards in the set that make them easy to play, and obviously being able to reduce the cost of enchantments, which is a huge theme of the enchantment playstyle if you are playing this in that type of deck. Not bad. Not mind-blowing, but not bad either. Star Athlete is 1 and 2 red creature human warrior with menace. When it attacks, choose up to 1 target non-land permanent. Its controller may sacrifice it. If they don't, it deals 5 damage to that player. And then it has Blitz 3 and a red, obviously meaning you can cast it for its Blitz cost, comes out with haste, and then it dies at the end phase, but you draw a card. Kind of cool. I love, as a huge football fan, obviously, I love he's running with the head like he's a running back or a player trying to score and they're trying to stop him. It's neat enough. I think it might have been better if it was 2 in a red instead of 1 red, just because it's a little bit in mixed color decks. It's a little harder to get that out, but overall, not bad. I mean, obviously, it's sort of like, it can't be blocked, so, I mean, it can, but Menace makes it harder. And you can just kind of ping out your opponent's stuff, and they either need to choose whether or not that's going to go, or they're going to take 5 damage, which will start to add up pretty quickly. And lastly, the most broken card by far, in my opinion, from this deck here is Seance Board. It's a 2-drop colorless artifact with Morbid. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, put a soul counter on this card. Tap, add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of soul counters on it. Spend this mana only to cast instant, sorcery, demon, and spirit spells. That's a lot of cards. This is not hard to, because it's each end step. You can essentially play this on your turn, and then it can have 4 counters by the time it goes back around. Just if you're playing sacrifice stuff, that can sack stuff during the opponent's turns. By the time this comes back around to you having 4 mana, it's already paid for itself. And if it does survive multiple turns, you're starting to get crazy amounts of mana resources, theoretically as early as turn 2 or 3 in the pod, which just makes this card an absolutely wild card, and I think it's really strong. It's going to see a lot of play, in my opinion. It's obviously, you're going to want it in Spellslinger, instant sorcery heavy decks more than, you know, just your generic deck. But if you're playing a lot of instant sorceries, or you're playing demon or spirit specifically, this is an auto include, in my opinion. And it's not often that you get those in a Commander Precon, but this definitely falls under that category, in my opinion. Quick note, they didn't call it Ouija Board because even though Hasbro does own the trademarks of both, there's a whole bunch of logistical stuff involved, I guess, with even licensing yourself your own IP. So I don't know exactly how it works, but I know Mark Rosewater was asked about it. I thought it was kind of funny, but that's fine. It's a little bit more fitting to not have a brand name thing in there anyway. So yeah, that's it for the deck. I think these cards are cool. I think they're definitely, it's got to be one of the weaker Commander decks out of the 3, in my opinion, even though it does have this card, which is just really good. But people may like it, and I don't know exactly whether or not there's any great reprints in here. I haven't seen the full list yet, so there could be some value in it, but obviously do your own research and, you know, take a look around and see if you like what you see. Otherwise, let me know what you guys think of the deck in the comments down below, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.